I never thought a simple question from an Uber driver would save my life. But sometimes, the smallest lies we tell become the biggest truths that protect us. And that night, my instinct to lie about being home alone might have been the only thing standing between me and something unthinkable. It was a Saturday evening in late September, around 9:45 p.m. I'd been out with my college friends celebrating my roommate Emma's birthday at Maggiano's in downtown Phoenix. The night had been perfect. Amazing pasta, endless breadsticks, lots of laughter, and that carefree feeling you only get when you're 22, and the world still feels full of possibilities. But Emma had work early the next morning at her internship with Wells Fargo, so she'd left around 8:30 with her boyfriend Jake. My other friends, Melissa and Ashley, lived way out in Scottsdale, and I didn't want to impose by asking for a ride all the way to my apartment complex near Arizona State University in Tempe, which was about 25 minutes away. So I did what I always did. Opened the Uber app while standing outside the restaurant on Central Avenue. The downtown Phoenix nightlife was in full swing around me. Roosevelt Row was packed with people bar hopping, and the light rail was still running, carrying ASU students back and forth between downtown and campus. I could hear music spilling out from Cityscape's various clubs and restaurants. The wait time was only 6 minutes. A driver named Roberto had accepted my ride, driving a black Toyota Camry with decent ratings, 4.2 stars, which wasn't amazing, but wasn't terrible either. His profile photo showed a man who looked to be in his 40s, with dark hair and a neutral expression. When the car pulled up outside the restaurant, I checked the license plate against the app. Arizona plate, LMN 4387, everything matched. I slid into the back seat, still buzzing from the evening's festivities, and gave Roberto a friendly, "Hey, how's your night going?" "Not bad," he replied, adjusting his rearview mirror to look at me. "Busy night, lots of people out celebrating. Downtown." Roberto seemed normal enough at first. He was probably in his mid-40s, wearing a plain grey hoodie, with the kind of tired look that suggested he'd been driving around Phoenix all night, picking up college students and downtown partiers. The car smelled like vanilla air freshener mixed with something else, coffee from a Circle K cup in the holder. We pulled away from Central Avenue and headed east toward the I-10 freeway that would take us to Tempe. The Phoenix skyline looked beautiful with all its lights reflecting off the glass towers of downtown, the mountains barely visible as dark silhouettes against the star-filled Arizona sky. For the first few minutes, our conversation was typical small talk. Roberto asked if I was a student at ASU, which was an easy guess given my age, and the fact that we were heading toward Tempe. I told him I was a junior studying marketing, which was true. He mentioned that he'd been driving Uber in the Phoenix area for about 2 years, mostly nights and weekends, to supplement his day job at a warehouse in West Phoenix. As we merged onto I-10 East, passing the familiar landmarks of downtown Phoenix, Chase Field where the Diamondbacks play, the imposing towers of the financial district, Roberto started asking more personal questions. "So you live alone, or do you have roommates?" he asked casually, his eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror. "I have a roommate," I replied honestly, thinking of Emma back at our apartment in the University Towers complex. "She's probably already asleep though. Early morning tomorrow." "That's smart," Roberto said. "College can be expensive. Sharing, rent helps." Nothing seemed weird about that exchange. Lots of Uber drivers make conversation about college life when they're driving students. As we passed the Salt River and entered Tempe, I could see the ASU campus spreading out to our left, the palm trees lining University Drive lit up against the desert night. But then Roberto's questions started getting more specific. So what floor do you live on? He asked, as we took the exit toward my apartment complex. I found that a little odd, but answered anyway. Third floor, I said, though I wasn't sure why he needed to know. That's nice. Good view probably. Your roommate, she goes to ASU too. Yeah, she's a business major, I replied, starting to feel a tiny bit uncomfortable, but not yet alarmed. Maybe he was just trying to be friendly. We turned onto Mill Avenue, the main strip that runs through Tempe, past all the college bars and restaurants that were still bustling with Saturday night activity. Students were walking up and down the street, heading to parties or late-night food spots. Everything felt normal and safe. But as we approached my apartment complex near Rural Road and University Drive, Roberto's questions took a turn that made my stomach drop. Is your roommate home tonight? He asked. His tone still conversational, but something in his voice had shifted slightly. I mean, since she had work tomorrow. That's when alarm bells started going off in my head. Why did he need to know if Emma was home? Why did it matter to him whether I'd be alone in my apartment? Every self-defense class I'd ever taken, every true crime podcast I'd listened to, every warning my mum had given me about stranger danger suddenly came flooding back. There was no legitimate reason for an Uber driver to need that information. My heart started beating faster, but I tried to keep my voice casual and confident. This was the moment that changed everything. The moment when I made a split-second decision that I now realize probably saved my life. Oh yeah, she's definitely home, I lied smoothly. Actually, she's having a few friends over tonight. My boyfriend Jake is there too. He's staying the night. They're probably all watching a movie or something. I watched Roberto's face in the rearview mirror as I said this. His expression didn't change much, but I caught a quick flash of something. Disappointment, frustration. It was so brief I almost missed it, but it was there. That sounds fun, he said, but his voice sounded different now, flatter, less interested. We were pulling into the parking lot of University Towers, a large complex that housed hundreds of ASU students. The parking lot was well lit, and there were several other cars around, which made me feel slightly better. But Roberto wasn't heading toward the main entrance, where he was supposed to drop me off. The main entrance is over there, I said, pointing toward the brightly lit front doors, where a few students were coming and going. I know a better spot, Roberto said. Closer to the elevator, but he was driving toward the side of the building, toward a dimmer area near the dumpsters and maintenance entrance. An area where there were no other people around. An area where the security cameras wouldn't have a clear view. Every instinct I had was screaming that something was wrong. Actually, the front entrance is fine, I said firmly, my hand already on the door handle, even though the car was still moving. My boyfriend said he'd meet me downstairs anyway. Another lie, but this one made Roberto immediately change direction and head toward the main entrance. Oh, he's coming down? Roberto asked, and I could hear the disappointment clearly now. Yeah, any minute now, I said, pulling out my phone and pretending to text someone. He's probably already on his way down when we pulled up to the main entrance. I had my hand on the door handle and was ready to bolt, but Roberto surprised me by getting out of the car. Let me help you with your purse, he said, even though I was carrying a small crossbody bag that clearly didn't need help. That's okay, I've got it, I said quickly, stepping out of the car and immediately heading toward the building entrance. There were 2 other students standing near the doors, smoking and talking, which made me feel safer. But Roberto followed me toward the entrance. You sure your boyfriend is coming down? He asked, looking around the parking lot. I don't see anyone, My blood was pounding in my ears now. This was not normal Uber driver behavior. He should have dropped me off and left immediately, not gotten out of his car and followed me toward my building. Yeah, he'll be here any second, I said, pretending to look at my phone again. Actually, he just texted me. He's in the elevator. Now. I started walking faster toward the entrance, where the two students were still standing, safety in numbers. But I could hear Roberto's footsteps behind me on the concrete. That's when I made another quick decision that probably saved my life. Instead of going inside, where Roberto might try to follow me, I walked up to the two students who were smoking. Hey guys, I said loudly, my voice probably a little too bright and cheerful. Are you heading upstairs? My key card isn't working for some reason. They looked at me a little confused, but one of them, a guy with sandy hair wearing an ASU basketball jersey, said, Sure, no problem. Roberto had stopped following me and was standing about 10 feet away, clearly listening to our conversation. I could feel his eyes on me, but I kept my focus on the students. Thanks so much, I said. My roommate Emma is upstairs, and my boyfriend Jake too. They're going to be so annoyed if I can't get up there. I said their names loudly and clearly, making sure Roberto could hear, making sure he knew that people were expecting me, people who would notice if I didn't arrive. The girl with the students, a petite brunette with multiple piercings, looked over at Roberto and then back at me. I think she could sense something was off too. Is that your Uber driver? She asked quietly. Yeah, I whispered back. Something feels weird about him. Without missing a beat, the guy in the ASU jersey stepped forward. Hey man, he called out to Roberto. Everything good? She made it safe. Roberto seemed to realize that his opportunity, whatever it was, had passed. Too many witnesses now. Too many people who would remember him. Yeah, all good, Roberto said. But he was already backing toward his car. Have a good night. He got back in his Toyota Camry and drove away, but not before I got a clear look at his license plate again and took a photo with my phone. The three of us waited until his car was completely out of sight before anyone spoke. That was super weird. The girl said, Uber drivers don't usually get out of their cars. Yeah, and they definitely don't follow you toward your building. The guy added, Smart thinking, asking us for help. We all went upstairs together, and they walked me all the way to my apartment door. When I got inside, Emma was indeed asleep, just like I'd told Roberto. But I woke her up and told her everything that had happened. You should report this, she said immediately. That's not normal behavior at all. So I did. I reported Roberto through the Uber app, filed a report with ASU campus security, and even called the Tempe police non-emergency line to document what had happened. I gave them Roberto's license plate number, his photo from the app, and a detailed description of his behavior. The campus security officer I spoke with told me something that made my blood run cold. You're the third student this month who's reported a similar incident, she said. An Uber driver asking personal questions about living situations, getting out of the car, following students toward their buildings. We think it might be the same guy, 3 other students, 3 other young women who had encountered Roberto, or someone like him. Are you enjoying this story so far? Let me know in the comments what you think Roberto was planning. And don't forget to subscribe for more true safety stories that could save your life. A week later, I got a call from Detective Martinez with the Tempe Police Department. They had arrested Roberto, whose real name was Carlos Mendez, after a 4th student reported him. But this time, the student had been alone, and Roberto had tried to follow her all the way to her apartment door. She had managed to get inside and, locked the door, but Roberto had stood outside her apartment for nearly 20 minutes, trying the door handle and looking through the windows. A neighbor had called 911, and Roberto was arrested for stalking and attempted breaking and entering. When they searched his car, they found a small notebook with addresses of several apartment complexes near ASU, along with notes about individual students' schedules and living situations. My address was in that notebook. So was Emma's class schedule, which Roberto had somehow figured out from our conversation. Detective Martinez told me that Roberto had been using information gathered during Uber rides to target female students who lived alone or whose roommates were frequently away. He would learn their routines, figure out when they'd be most vulnerable, and then return to their apartments later. Your quick thinking probably prevented something much worse, Detective Martinez said. The lies you told about having people waiting for you likely saved your life. Roberto Carlos was charged with multiple counts of stalking, attempted burglary, and using his position as a rideshare driver to gather information for criminal purposes. He was also connected to several break-ins at student apartments near ASU and other colleges around Phoenix. But here's the most chilling part. During his interrogation, Carlos admitted that he specifically targeted students who mentioned being alone or having roommates who were away. He said he chose late-night rides because students were more likely to be drunk or tired and let their guard down during conversation. My innocent answers about Emma having work the next morning had actually been red flags to him. He was counting on me being alone that night. The notebook they found in his car contained detailed information about more than 30 different students across Phoenix, addresses, schedules, roommate situations, class times, work hours. He had been systematically gathering this information for months, building a database of potential victims. Carlos was sentenced to 8 years in prison, but the investigation revealed that he wasn't working alone. There was a network of rideshare drivers in the Phoenix area who were sharing information about vulnerable passengers. They had been coordinating their efforts, targeting specific apartment complexes and student housing areas. The FBI got involved when they realized this wasn't just a local issue. Similar patterns were being reported in college towns across Arizona, Nevada, and California. The final count was staggering. Over 200 reported incidents across 4 states, with at least 15 confirmed abductions linked to the network. I think about that night constantly. I think about how close I came to becoming another statistic, another missing person poster, taped to a telephone pole, all because I trusted too easily and answered questions I should have kept private. But I also think about the power of that split-second decision to lie. Those few words, "She's definitely home," and "My boyfriend is there too," created just enough doubt in Carlos's mind to change his entire plan. He was looking for an easy target, someone isolated and vulnerable. The moment I convinced him that people were waiting for me, that my absence would be noticed immediately, I stopped being the perfect victim. The lies I told weren't just words. They were armor. They were the barrier between safety and danger, between making it home that night and never being seen again. I still use rideshare services, but everything has changed about how I approach them. I never share personal information about my living situation. I never mention being alone or having plans cancelled. I always tell drivers that someone is expecting me, even when that's not true. I sit directly behind the passenger seat, never behind the driver, where it's harder to escape. I share my trip with multiple people every single time. I keep my finger on the emergency button in the app, and if a driver asks questions, that feel too personal or invasive, I end the ride immediately. Most importantly, I trust my instincts. That night, something felt wrong, long before Roberto got out of his car. The invasive questions, the interest in my roommate's schedule, the route toward the darker side of the building. All of those were red flags that my subconscious picked up on before my logical mind could process them. Women are often taught to be polite, to not hurt people's feelings, to give others the benefit of the doubt. But sometimes politeness can be dangerous. Sometimes the cost of being wrong about someone's intentions is too high to risk. That night taught me that it's okay to lie to protect yourself. It's okay to be rude if something feels off. It's okay to hurt someone's feelings if it keeps you safe. Your safety is more important than social niceties. I want other women to know that they don't owe strangers honesty about their personal lives. You don't have to answer invasive questions just because someone asks them. You have the right to keep your living situation, your schedule, your relationships private. You have the right to lie if it makes you safer. Most rideshare drivers are honest people just trying to make a living, but predators have learned to exploit our trust in these systems. They use the illusion of safety, the tracked rides, the ratings, the background checks, to get access to potential victims. These systems aren't foolproof. They're tools. And like any tool, they can be misused by people with bad intentions. Our safety depends not just on the technology, but on our own awareness and decision-making. The question, "Are you home alone?" was meant to identify vulnerability and isolation. Instead, it became the moment I realized I had more power than my attacker assumed. The lie I told in response wasn't just self-protection. It was resistance, a refusal to be the victim he expected me to be. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be what someone expects you to be. Sometimes survival begins with the recognition that you don't owe anyone honesty about your vulnerabilities, and sometimes the most important truth is the one you choose not to tell, because sometimes a simple lie can save your life. Sometimes pretending you're not alone is the only thing standing between you and becoming another missing person. Sometimes the most important truth is the one you keep to yourself. I'm alive today because I lied to a stranger on a Saturday night in September. I'm here to tell this story because I listened to my instincts and chose my safety over politeness. And I hope that by sharing this experience, I can help other women make the same choice when their moment comes. Your life might depend on it,